let's talk about the Mountain Valley Pipeline and just how bad this is going to be. We live in a horrifically bad political ecosystem that protects the Democratic establishment, especially this current president, in the worst, most callous way possible, making it seem like this so-called debt ceiling deal, which was a complete disaster. Just with the Mountain Valley Pipeline alone, could you better educate the audience as to just how bad this is really going to be once construction really kicks into high gear, and what the long-term effects economically and environmentally it could mean to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, the route that the Mountain Valley Pipeline goes through is a route that is, the southern coal fields. It is these areas that have already been completely damaged by mountaintop removal, which causes 40% lack of biodiversity in the downstreams from those mountains. So it's really just like putting salt on an open wound. And this pipeline alone would be the equivalent of adding, I believe, 19 million cars to the roads annually, or adding 29 new coal plants. It's ridiculous. And people like Manchin will tout that natural gas is ultimately better than coal, but we know these pipelines are leaky. We also know that the areas that Mountain Valley Pipeline will go through, 75% of the areas they're going to go through are highly susceptible to earthquakes and mudslides. We're the number one state for landslides, and these people think putting a pipeline, weaving it up and down on slopes that I don't even think we've tested on this kind of steep incline. They think that's just gonna stay put. It's not. It's going to leak. It's already been leaking. I know you said once construction picks up, but the reason this project has been delayed for so long is because they already started construction on it, and they'll lie and say they're 95% done. They're not. They still have over 500 streams and rivers and wetlands to cross. And yeah, it's already doing so much damage. I know a frontline West Virginian named Mari Johnson spoke to Democracy Now! About this, and it was really powerful. But he literally can't shower. He can't drink his water. And yeah, the pipeline isn't even done, So the impacts of this, I can't even imagine. But it's so infuriating to know our history in Appalachia, the things that miners fought for, to still be treated as an extraction colony in 2023 feels extremely dystopian. It feels like it is just, it is spitting on the people who need the most help. It's punching us when we're down, and I'm really devastated by it.
Yeah, well, you guys, you're District 12. I mean, I've always thought when I read that book, that was which is, people who don't know, I'm talking about the Hunger Games. When I read it, when I was thinking of District 12, well, first of all, I know it was filmed in North Carolina because it was filmed near where I go in the summer. But that's what I picture, is that the forgotten, it's where it is the most abused part of this country by this country. And are you familiar with the documentary that Eleanor Goldfield did about that whole area, about the mountain stripping and all of that in West Virginia? Are you familiar with that documentary?
Oh, gee, there's been a lot. So I don't know. I honestly haven't watched too many documentaries because I really started from lived experience, and I've only been organizing for about 2 years. So I am continually learning more and more about the history of Appalachia. And so I haven't seen too many documentaries, but I've talked to a whole lot of people.
She specifically did one about the stripping of the tops of the mountains there and the damage that that's been doing and what that has meant for them. So which is real. And it was we had her on the show a couple of years ago when it came out. But it was just really, it's when you said ripping off mountaintops, I'm like, yeah, we learned all about that.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious where you stand on nuclear power, because I think that this is a very key ingredient. There are a lot of people on the populist right that are very much in favor of nuclear power, and they are not opposed to getting to a net neutral carbon emission. I think that this is one of the ways to really bridge the divide. We also have to acknowledge the fact that solar and wind, in terms of their raw materials, still involve a heavy dose of cobalt and lithium mining, which destroy the environment, not as much as coal and natural gas do, but still a considerable issue. Obviously, the goal when it comes to solar power is going to be the ability to create the panels with sodium chloride, of which we have an endless abundant supply of that particular mineral. But unfortunately, we're not there as of yet. And we all know some of the reasons we don't actually get there sooner rather than later is because Capitol Hill has a big oil lobby that will stop at nothing to prevent our ability to evolve on how we do energy extraction. So where do you currently stand regarding nuclear power?
Good question. Maybe not something I have the most expertise on, to be fully transparent. I studied psychology and addiction studies in college, and so that's really where my expertise comes from. Is just really seeing the devastating after effects of fossil fuel projects and companies on Appalachia. And so I feel like in any industry we're talking about, as far as energy goes, like, truly, at the end of the day, I just want to see the health and safety of people put first, and that's not currently happening in West Virginia. So, like, if there's a path forward that is, bringing us to net zero faster than 2050 and, create space for fossil fuel workers in Appalachia to transition, that's really what I want to see. And I don't have the most knowledge on, like, how we get there, but I think it's important to note that that is, like, literally the job of our representatives. And because of the fact they're so beholden to these corporate interests, we're not getting anywhere. These conversations are just being had with like us, people who don't necessarily have the institutional power to do something about it. So I just want to bring the message to the people who do have the positions of power, the ability and access to go speak to folks who have better knowledge than fossil fuel CEOs who continually showed that they want to lie to the public about all of the disastrous things they do. We need system change before, like, these conversations are even effective. And that's really frustrating to me.
Well,
that was a good answer, because the truth is, I feel exactly the same way. I'm not pro or against nuclear. I've said it a million times. I am pro what is going to benefit the most amount of people in the safest way. Like, I am pro whatever that is, and I would love to defer to experts. And you're right, that is what our representatives are supposed to do. And regular people, quite honestly, that are just going about their lives, shouldn't have to be figuring out the solving the entire energy crisis. Like, they shouldn't have to be. I shouldn't have to completely understand that. I really shouldn't.
Yeah.
So I agree. I want what's best for the most amount of people to have healthy lives. Well, that's what I want.
Based on the research that I've done and the guests that we've had on this podcast, I can absolutely tell you with almost complete certainty that the one major energy source that can be utilized to get the most people off of coal and natural gas the fastest would be nuclear power. That is the fastest way to get it done.
There's its own problems with getting it up and running.
That is true. And the goal here, of course, is the Series 4 version of nuclear power, which is new. And the goal of the nuclear Series 4 is to eliminate nuclear waste, which, of course, is it's contaminated. It can be obviously harmful to the environment. When you go to the southwest parts of the United States, like Utah, Nevada, and places like that, there's a reason why there is no human life in thousands and thousands of square miles, because you don't know what the hell's buried under the soil, and Lord knows there's probably a considerable amount of nuclear waste that has been buried. But if there is a way that it can be replenished and used over and over again, I would think that is, without question, one of those ways to get it done. And like I said, there are strength in numbers, and if you can start attracting the rural part of the country, the forgotten people, the people who do vote for Trump, those people are not against this. What they're against is basically being forced into a corner that they simply cannot get out of and cannot afford, like the nonsense they're trying in California right now, which is to basically get everybody onto EV cars. That is not feasible in this moment. You cannot try that, and who will get screwed? Much like when Roe v. Wade gets overturned. Who gets screwed? The most vulnerable people in society. who's facing the most difficult challenge.
Well, that like the EV, like to me, that's just not what we're talking about. Environmental justice, and what to me that is we need to everybody needs to sort of share the burden. Okay, so there's a certain amount of waste. And it's just infuriating. And we've had the NIMBY saying forever, but that's really what this is. And Appalachia and places like that basically become the dumping ground because other people don't want it near them. So I think if we were to just spread it out, level it all out evenly amongst people, I mean, obviously it can't be done, geographically. But I think that would be like, to me, the injustice aspect is what, the key thing of what you're talking about versus solving the entire energy crisis.
I mean, why not both?
Oh, no, I agree with both. But to me, the priority is helping these people because the fact that people are being abused is that crosses over into nefarious when we talk about things like what's going on in Flint, when we talk about things like where it really is intentional and it's malfeasance versus just overall human consumption and fighting against things like the military industrial complex or big agra. It's, to me, we're talking about specific injustices that need to be addressed before we can even talk about the bigger, what's the emissions problem there.
I don't agree with that. And I'll tell you why, because the one thing that the environmental movement has a problem with is that you are generally associated with basically being a bunch of tree hugging hippies. And when the whole idea of, well, we're going to sit down, we're going to protest, we're going to hold up a sign, and we will play the video that you guys did a spectacular job of getting to Senator Klobuchar, who is one of the most nefarious people in politics and has been protected for far too long. But again, when you play the game the way she has, you can get away with her nonsense.
I don't understand how you're disagreeing with what I said, with what you're saying.
What I'm saying is you want to be able to attract a certain segment of the population who wants to lock arms with you. Yeah. And I'm not saying that it all has to be, guys in button-down suits, but there has to be a certain segment of, let's say, the populist right who want to join you guys and say, yeah, this is a problem. Like the fact that it is going to be a catastrophic circumstance in East Palestine that most people are not even really talking about how much worse this is going to get. We just had Jordan Chariton of Status Quo on last week to talk about the environmental catastrophe that's happening right now in Kalamazoo, Michigan. There's all of these things happening at once. But I'm willing to bet that the overwhelming majority of people who live in these parts of the country, they are desperate to have some type of a unifying force that can bring people together. The corporate media will do everything in its power to peg you guys as nothing more than a nuisance.
See, you're looking at it from the perspective of, like, I was giving her some sort of like political advice. I was sort of like commending the fact that that's their mission. I wasn't suggesting some sort of tactical things as to who they lock arms with. It's interesting. See, I'm sitting there and looking at it from the moral mission perspective, and he's sitting there looking at it from like the political strategy perspective.
But I think that matters, because if you're
I'm not saying it doesn't.
No, but it does from this perspective. If you're showing up at events and you have 15 to 20 people with you, that's one thing. When you have 150 to 200 people with you, then people are going to start to notice and they're not going to be able to ignore it. And when you have 1,500 to 2,000 people with you, now you've got a movement, and now people are really going to have a hard time dealing with you, because the bigger it gets, the more people are intrigued by why are all these people banding together? What's going on here? They really seem like they have their ish together. I think that what you guys did in particular, going after Klobuchar, was absolutely genius, because Minnesota is one of the very few states in this country that really has their ish together at the state level. But for some reason, at the federal level, it's an absolute nightmare with Amy Klobuchar. So let's play the clip, because it's a really, really good one.
I gotta close down about Burma. That was like bad. Be a climate leader. Live your values. 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 Be a climate leader. Live your values.
anything drilling on federal land that's
Please. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Baby, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Yes. I'm disgusted at so many levels with that woman. It's like she truly cannot handle any sort of challenge or criticism, which then to me means this is completely the wrong job for you. How do you be a representative of anybody at all if you can't even interact with human beings that are in your, within your constituency? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's pathetic, really. And that is somebody, just by the way, that has no rhyme or reason to run for any further office, just putting that out there.
But you know what, Rylee? Give her credit for not even attempting to be anybody other than who she really is. She could have been, with all due respect, like Cory Booker and be like, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. You're doing an amazing job. I'm going to go vote against you, but I really appreciate what you're doing. Amy Klobuchar's like, these effing kids, why don't they grow up? At least she's transparent about how she really feels.
Disgusting.
Yeah, that's why I really like our tactic, is just because we're taking it directly to them. You can't ignore it. You're on camera. However you respond is however you respond. And for a majority of these, they walk away. They give a little make the ick face, and you can see the contempt that they have for the living, breathing people that they're supposed to be representing. I will say too that direct action, we've seen real outcomes. Like Klobuchar did vote for the amendment to strip the Mountain Valley Pipeline from the debt ceiling package. Do you think she would have done that? Has she not been lit up in the press very recently about her stance or lack of stance on Line 3? I don't think she would have. So yeah, this is super necessary. And I just wanted to call back to the point made earlier about how we need more people. We need even people on the right to recognize how we're all being treated as disposable. It doesn't matter what party you vote for at the end of the day. And so, yeah, that's something that I've consistently asked myself, how do we make it happen? Because the fossil fuel industry has done untold amounts of harm in so many ways that I think most people don't recognize. More recently, I found out that coal companies had been writing our West Virginia history textbooks up until the 90s. There wasn't not a single mention of the West Virginia mine wars. And at a protest we did last week, I asked the people who were there, has anybody been taught about the mine wars in school? Not a single hand was raised. This literally happened in West Virginia, in the coal fields, the largest violent labor uprising in United States history. The only time the National Guard has literally dropped bombs on United States citizens. And people don't know about it because of
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. You know what? But that, of course, opens that whole look who's been paying for all of our history textbooks for over time. And again, in every nefarious organization that's basically directed what we can and cannot know. But that's the kind of thing I feel like I'm way more aware of now. But as a kid, of course, whatever textbook you get, no one thinks to sit there and look up, oh, who's publishing this? What company? What are their interests? What is their bias? And of course, now at least for people who want to question, there's access to information that you can get. Now, there's also crappy information, but you can find information versus back, I'm old. There was no internet, right? You got what you got. This was it. This book says everything we need to know about history.
But this is also the bigger problem when it comes to DeSantis, and everybody is just kind of honing in on him, saying, look at these things that he's doing. Again, he wants the ultimate power. So when you're seeking the ultimate power, eventually the spotlight will go right on you, and everything that you've been involved in will come to light. If Joe Manchin ever thought about really running for president, even if he did take a flyer with this extremely corrupt no labels party, which wouldn't shock me, but let's just say that he did, the whole country would eventually figure out just how dirty and corrupt he is and the types of things that go on in, let's say, West Virginia that no one actually knows about. It just so happens that Florida happens to be a very consequential state electorally, so everyone pays attention to that. But that type of stuff, the type of rewriting history, writing they always say that history is written from the perspective of the winners.
Of course.
So we all too often have to deal with the fact that the overarching problem in our society, above everything else, is that corporate special interests have captured our government, hook, line, and sinker, whether at the local, state, and especially at the federal level.
You're this close to saying the problem is capitalism like I do.
Well, the problem is capitalism, even though I think capitalism can only survive if it is completely fused with socialism. So you can't have one without the other. The most successful nations around the world have a hybrid system. Australia has it, Japan has it, Germany has it, Scandinavia has it, the UK has it. We don't have it, and you're seeing the detrimental effects. The problem is we are the most militarily powerful nation on earth, and we do not hesitate to show that.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.